Thank you for joining us for the third session in our four-part webinar series. While the series is designed as a connected learning journey, each session also works independently. You'll gain valuable insights whether you watch and engage with one session or all four. Let me begin by sharing a little background about our work. At the Knowles Teacher Initiative, we believe great teaching changes lives. Since 1999, we've supported math and science teachers who work to improve education for all students. Our Teaching Fellows program helps early career high school math and science teachers build lasting expertise and leadership skills. The Knowles Academy offers professional learning opportunities created and facilitated by teachers, along with tailored services for schools and districts. Together, we're building a strong, connected community of educators. We're excited today to engage with you in your own professional learning by sharing aspects of our work. I'm Gina Wilson from the Knowles Teacher Initiative, presenting today on behalf of Jen Mosgrave and myself. Today, we are talking about how to strengthen equitable teaching practices through collaborative inquiry. This webinar is interactive and designed for you to do independently or with a small group. And throughout the webinar, I'll note places that you can pause the video to engage in the activities before continuing. All of the materials you will need can be found by using the QR codes that will be on the slides or on the resources page on our website. And if you're seeing this video on our YouTube page, the link to the resources is in the video description. Before we begin, here's our first pause and reflect. Take a moment to consider how you study your own practice. Do you do this formally or informally? Do you use the same structures over a school year or years? And what strengths and challenges do you find in the methods you are using? Once you've done this, come back to the video. So now that you've had a moment to think about how you study your own practice, we'd like to share how we consider the three ideas that drive our work. These are all situated within the University of Math and Science Teaching and Learning. For us, the power of learning comes from the intersection of all three. We'll engage in activities today that touch on each of these, and our hope is that you'll leave with some key ideas and practices that you take back to your context to help support the teaching and learning of math and science for all students. Today, you'll experience a very quick inquiry cycle and consider how to use learnings from collaborative inquiry to improve instruction. By the end, we hope that you feel equipped with some tools and resources that can support you in leading collaborative inquiry in your school. To do that, we'll first set the stage by sharing our ideas around equitable instruction and collaborative inquiry. Then we'll jump right into it. You'll examine a math task. No worries, if you're a science teacher, you can still do this just fine. Then use a protocol to review teacher data from a lesson that involved that task. We'll consider the implications from the data and end with you planning how to take these ideas back to your school. So let's discuss equitable teaching practices before we jump into the collaborative inquiry work. Within the classroom, equitable teaching practices do not mean that each student receives the exact same instruction, but rather that teachers have consistently high expectations for every learner, recognize the various strengths students bring with them to the classroom, and leverage those strengths during instruction. Teachers are uniquely positioned in their classrooms to address barriers to equitable student learning by developing their own equitable practices concerning curriculum, classroom culture, assessment, and other aspects important to their contexts. Beyond the classroom walls, equitable teaching requires that teachers understand that they understand the larger implications of instructional practices and educational policies on their teaching. They must also understand the structural barriers to student success, such as student tracking, disciplinary practices, and inequitable distribution of resources. For teachers to address inequities on behalf of students, they must also be willing to recognize, name, and dismantle inequities among adults who work together in our schools and professional communities. For example, their colleagues, administrators, community members, and professional communities. Teachers need to seek out and consider the diverse perspectives and ideas that seek to elevate the inclusion of all students. This means teachers must explore how issues of power and privilege based on identity play out among themselves and their colleagues, engage in honest conversations about those patterns, develop norms for inclusive participation, and reimagine ways of working with their colleagues. By embracing the power of inclusive collaboration, teachers can collectively envision, advocate for, and drive small and large-scale change towards equitable outcomes for students. So let's talk about what collaborative inquiry is. We know that teaching is a critically important, complex, and intellectually challenging endeavor. And we envision a profession where classroom teachers recognize and assert themselves as primary agents of educational improvement and study their practice with others to develop knowledge and expertise that uniquely positions them to affect change in their classrooms and beyond. At Knowles, one way we do this, specifically the second bullet, is through collaborative inquiry. And then we use the results to impact educational improvement. Collaborative inquiry expands on individual or solitary inquiry to include multiple voices. In education, we often talk about removing silos and increasing collaboration, and this is one intentional way to do that. Today, we'll discuss how colleagues can be involved in the inquiry process. And while many models of inquiry exist, we have chosen this model to use with our teaching fellows and to share with you. You'll notice we have our work shown in a cycle, and we are jumping in the cycle at the blue section of the diagram today. Inquiry requires a question or something you're wondering about. And in this phase of the work, colleagues, because we're focusing on collaborative inquiry, can help you focus or articulate your question to help ensure your work is addressing your actual concern or question. As you move into data collection, your colleagues' contributions from identifying your question may become apparent as you ponder data sources that will support insights into your possibly revised wondering or question. Colleagues can also provide suggestions for data sources you haven't considered to eliminate missing voices and to help you identify data sources that truly address your wondering or question. In terms of analyzing data, colleagues can also significantly contribute here as well. We view teaching and learning through our own identities and experiences and include multiple voices, and data analysis provides opportunities to investigate viewpoints and patterns that you might not have identified by yourself. And as you figure out what to do with the learnings from your data, colleagues can use their experiences to provide suggestions and insights for your next steps that you might not have identified if you were working alone. It is really important to stress that we don't believe individual inquiry is bad or a waste of time. Quite the opposite, in fact. And we also feel it is just as important to understand and honor that each learner and teacher approaches the material through their own identities and experiences. Conducting inquiry in collaboration with others intentionally makes space for teachers to examine their practice in support of all of their learners and to learn from and with each other how best to support their learners. So let's turn our attention now to a teacher's inquiry. We're going to serve as critical friends, meaning we'll be examining her data by using a protocol to help provide insights and a different perspective into her inquiry. We do want you to know that we're going to go through this process very quickly. So you'll get a little peek into the process, and our hope is that by doing this, you can start to see the power of collaborative inquiry and experience one way that you can engage in it. So let's set the stage for today. Our teacher is a 6th grade math teacher, and this year her goal is to develop a community of thinkers who can clearly communicate their thinking with others and ask questions about others' thinking. In support of her goal this year, she is focusing her inquiry on what it means to do math in her classroom. Since this is her focus, what it means to do math in her classroom, we want you to take a moment to think for yourself. What does it mean to do mathematics, and how is it related or not related to equitable teaching? Once you've had a moment to do that, come back to the video. So while our teacher has seen some progress in ways her students engage in doing math, she wants to learn more about how her own interactions with students while they are working together supports their engagement. She sees this as a sub-question to her bigger inquiry focus. And so far, she's noticed that her students talk to each other now more than they did at the beginning of the year. To explore her wondering, she collected data from her class yesterday. Specifically, what she's sharing today is her reflection about her first hour class engaging in the hexagon task. To prepare you to read her reflections, what we call a teaching replay, we want you to familiarize yourself with the hexagon task. And while this isn't always a part of being a critical friend, for our time here, we wanted to give you that chance. And for most of the protocol, the presenter is silent to allow them to really listen to others' perspectives. And this works out perfectly for us since she isn't here. If you would like, take a moment to pause and familiarize yourself with the hexagon task. And we want to point out that you do not need to complete the task in order to conduct the inquiry or act as a critical friend. Instead, we just wanted you to know what the task was that the students were engaging in. So let's dig into collaborative inquiry. Our data analysis protocol has 3 parts. The first part is sharing the data. The next part is describing any noticings and wonderings that you have from the data. And the final step is interpreting. We'll guide you through each part. And again, our timing today is very short. We're just giving you a small taste of the experience. You'll need to open both QR codes on this slide or the links that are in the resources section. One is the data analysis protocol we will be using, and one is our data, the teaching replay I mentioned earlier. Now you're going to use the data analysis protocol to analyze the teaching replay. And right now, you're only doing the sharing the data section. As we've discussed before, collaborative inquiry is powerful. And while we hope you are able to collaborate with colleagues to explore your problems of practice, we understand some people may be watching this webinar individually. Please still use the protocol so you can experience it. And if you are lucky enough to be watching this with a group, conduct the protocol in your group. If you need to, larger groups can be broken into smaller inquiry groups. So first you'll read the teaching replay, and then you'll follow the prompts and the directions in the sharing the data protocol section. And once you do that, come on back. Now we're going to move on to the describing the data section, which is the next section in your protocol. Again, read the section in the protocol, follow the prompts, and once you do that, come on back. Now we can move on to the interpreting the data section. You'll notice that we've provided possible prompts in this section. We find that these prompts are helpful in keeping the conversation focused on the connection between the inquiry question and our data. You're also welcome to add your own prompts. Once again, once you do this, come on back. Now that you've shared, described, and interpreted the data, we can consider implications of the data. This is where you can discuss implications as they relate to our teacher's inquiry question. Given your analysis, what are the implications for her next steps? You'll notice that there are 2 parts to identifying implications. One where the collective group shares possible implications, and then one where the presenter reflects back to the group the implications that they are taking away or that they find the most helpful. Clearly today we'll focus just on the collective part, and when you do this with a group, you can implement the presenter's reflections. You'll also notice that we have included possible prompts in this section as well, and we encourage you to use them if you find them helpful. Now that we've used our protocol and ended with our implications and next steps, we want to step back and see what you are learning from this process. How did engaging in a speed round of collaborative inquiry impact your thinking about doing math or science, equitable teaching practices, and/or collaborative inquiry? Take a few moments to articulate that individually for yourself and/or in your group if you're lucky enough to be watching with a group, and then come back to the webinar. The last thing we want to discuss is how you can use this process in your context. Before you get a collaborative inquiry group together, think about how you want to share the idea of collaborative inquiry and its benefits. Think about potential sticking points and possible solutions, and honor any of the thoughts you are having about this process. Remember that setting up collaborative inquiry can be easy or complex. The protocol can be simple or short, or even longer. You can focus on as many student solutions as you want, as many groups as you want, or the actual data that you're using. The data can be a class set of student work, or it can be an observation from class that you want to chat about. It can also be systems-wide if that is where you're thinking about equitable teaching practices. The goal is to make progress and impact student opportunities. Inquiry will never be perfect, even after a lot of cycles. So thank you for joining us today. We've talked about equitable teaching practices and collaborative inquiry, and even conducted a quick inquiry cycle. We hope you found the webinar useful and engaging. We also want to share that there are more opportunities to continue to deepen your learning. First, there are additional webinars in this series. The first webinar discusses schools as systems. The second discusses how to begin collaborations with colleagues. And the one after this will discuss how to use inquiry to design instruction. Second, if you are or know of an early career high school math or science teacher, the application for our 2026 Teaching Fellowship is open through January 6, 2026. If you are viewing this after that date, you can sign up to be alerted for when our next application cycle opens for the 2027 cohort. And finally, you can learn more about other professional learning opportunities we provide, including online courses and in-person events, by visiting the Knowles Academy page on our website. Again, thank you for engaging in our webinar today.